Hey everybody, CecelyV here. I am, as promised, finally managing to start my content for drawing fundamentals. So this is going to be a short series on the fundamentals of drawing that was requested by a person or two, and I thought that would be a helpful attachment to the stuff that we do for figure drawing. And I know I don't have a few things out there for figure drawing. A lot of it's focused on the line of action and just sort of setting up. So I do plan to go through and do a bit more for that whole process and more demos. And then, of course, for my channel members, the more in-depth stuff and longer drawing demo things will be for my channel members. But I will make sure that I'm giving plenty of information for everybody. So it seems a little remedial to some people, but the first thing that has to happen when you're drawing is you have to look, right? You have to look at what you're drawing. You have to understand what it is you're trying to draw. And to do that, you have to understand its shapes, its forms, its planes, angles, all that stuff. So just for the perhaps uninitiated or less familiar, we're just going to go through and identify those things across this still life here that I created, and this one, and this one. So it's like kind of like easy, medium, and a little bit more challenging, okay? Okay, so first are shapes. Now obviously, when we say shapes, we're talking about the flat stuff. Forms is the 3D stuff, shapes are the flat things. That being said, you can, when you're setting up your drawing, treat the forms like a big old shape and just create your envelope. So here we can say, okay, here we've got this rough shape, right, of a rectangle. We can say we've got this rough shape of a rectangle, right? We know that they are more three-dimensional than that, but for setup, this helps. And then obviously we've got this here. That can be your whole shape. Now that's more like a few shapes, right? So that's more like here we've got a rectangle, and then we've got a rectangle. So those are the planes. No, I don't want sticky keys, right? So these are your planes, and then that makes your form. But when you're just getting a feel for this is where this part of the drawing lives, you can just make create an envelope for the whole thing, and you know that that contains all this other stuff, right? And so really, if we were going to say this is my setup for this drawing, then we're done. Because, excuse me, everything else inside of here is forms and starts to get three-dimensional, starts to get smaller. So we have this large shape, and then you've got these smaller shapes, and then everything in here is like all this dirt. You could say this was a shape for this part of the dirt, and this was a shape for this part of the dirt. And the only reason you would block it out like that is because you know you're not going to start off going like, oh, I'm going to make this little line for this piece of dirt and this little line. Please don't do that. You will drive yourself insane. And no, it's not worth it, especially not at this stage of the drawing. And if you were doing this in pencil or charcoal, then you're going to be doing mostly indications of these shapes using tone. So you're not really drawing each little individual stick. So hopefully that makes sense. So let's go on to our medium difficulty, right? So over here, I really should Control S, save early and often. We'll save you pulling out your hair later. I also want to point out for anybody who does not have Photoshop or Procreate or anything like that, this works with pretty much any digital painting program that you're comfortable with. It will also just work fine with tracing paper. So if you guys want to get a still life photo or take a picture of something and print it out, you can do that and then just get tracing paper, and it works just fine. You don't have the keyboard shortcuts of like Control Z to back out and everything, but effectively it works the same. That's just what we're copying. All right, so for this one, shapes, right? So we've got this shape here. Oop, wrong color. This shape here obviously is a circle. Back here would be another circle, right? And then when we combine them, we get the form of the cylinder. This shape here is, it's more like, I'm going to go like this. Boom, boom, boom. It's basically a triangle, right? But with curvy bits, right? Or I guess the simpler thing would have been just the base, and then we're just going to go up in sort of like an egg shape. And then we're going to save. And then we've got our wobbly shapes, I guess, for our rocks. So we can just go like that. Now, obviously, when you're setting up your drawing, you're not tracing over these things. You're just drawing them. But this kind of thing, using a tracing paper, using a tracing layer, will at least give you some practice in that, and that helps you learn to see, it helps build confidence, and it helps get your understanding of the hierarchy of things, of what to draw first. It helps solidify that. Always start with your large shapes, then your medium shapes, and then your small shapes. Small shapes are basically your details. Don't want to start with those because they have to live on something, right? They have to live on the medium and large shapes. So let's say now we're going to go into the form. So I'm going to pick a different color just because it's fun. Let's do a bright blue. I don't know if that's bright enough. Doesn't stand out very much, does it? Orange does. Okay. So like we said before, in the normal course of things, once you're comfortable, you're really not, you see the shapes, but you're really starting mostly with your horizon line and angles to place your drawing, and then your forms, right? But being able to identify everything is important. So we've got this form here. I'm just going to go like this. So these two parallel lines are going to be connected by these circles, and you always want to draw through. So I know I can't really see the back of that, but these two circles, you know, whenever you have a cylinder, that's not breaking. It's because you're connecting two circles or two ellipses, right? So, same type of thing. And then we would have this is actually part of a shape because it's the inside of the candle, right? And then the form for this would be, so it curves around the back. So we're still going to get our bottom here. But since it curves along the bottom, that would be our bottom, right? This, and it's not quite straight. And then that makes it three-dimensional so that we have, now obviously we don't see the bottom, but that is our three-dimensional form. We've got this bottom plane that we can't see, right? And then we've got these planes here that we can see. And they're filled in with the elements of the geode or whatever that is. And then we could do the same thing for the rocks, right? So this is going to be coming up around here, and it curves. And so that's that form. This is more of a rectangular prism. You get a little bit of the side that we can see here, not a lot. And then this one, it's hard to see because it's so bright. but it's kind of doing a little bit of this. No, I don't want sticky keys. It's only asking me that because I keep hitting shift so much. It's annoying. But the shift, holding shift and clicking helps you make straight lines in Photoshop. All right. Now, like I said, this might all seem like, oh, this is so simple. I already know this, Go away, sticky keys. But this is how you get a solid drawing. And most of the time, when people come into my adult classes, they do have a hard time seeing forms. I teach adult classes at Art Plus Academy. I had a video come out a few days ago where I was talking about the different classes. This is a lot of stuff that we go over in the adult drawing and painting class, and as well as the figure drawing class. And then obviously the use of Photoshop and the digital painting, that's Photoshop and digital painting classes. But yeah, these kinds of things are important. Even though it seems simple, it's important because this is the bones of your drawing, right? This is the foundation of the structure. It is a structure, so that's why everything looks the way that it does, and why the light hits it the way it does, and how the tones wrap around, and so on and so forth, and why you get your shadows and all that. So that's how we learn the nature of what we're drawing, right? Okay, so then, well, I guess I can leave that. Push Control S. Okay, slow, save. Okay, there it goes. All right, so for this one, we're going to call that one our slightly more complex one. Now we have, we'll do our forms. Alrighty, so let me make sure. Yeah. I'm just checking my notes, guys, so I'm covering the right stuff. Okay, so same deal. I don't think I'm going to do orange because the shoe is orange. There we go. All right, so this is a little bit more involved of a form. Forms and shapes, so we'll say shapes. Now, this right here, this little decorative what's-its thing, is essentially a circle, right? It's a sphere. It's a sphere of wrapped up, whatever that is. But it is a form versus a shape, right? Because it's not flat. But when you first draw spheres, same thing with this one, right here. When you first draw them, you have to start with a circle, because the thing that makes a sphere look like a sphere in drawing are contour lines and light and shadow and all the reflections and everything that goes with that. So when you're blocking in, it's okay to just do a circle. Don't worry about the rest until it's time, right? Because you do have to start getting into some weeds to make a circle look like, to turn a circle into a sphere, I should say. Now for the shoe, this is what you call a more complex form. So there are forms together that make the shoe, right? So we have to understand those first. So the first thing we want to understand is, we'll stick to shapes layer here real quick. This right here, the opening, for now, at first, we would just leave that as a shape, right? Everything else, we can pretty much break up into forms. So I'm going to do... All right, so the way we need to break this down is we need to simplify it, right? So we can say we're going to come down. Come down here. And we're going to come down here. And we're going to say, okay, this back here is going to, and this comes around here, right? Now, obviously it curves a bit, doesn't go straight down, but for the purposes of making this, it's okay. We have to come in here, and we come in here, and we connect these two. that gives us, and this here, that gives us that form, right? So we've got, that's the part for the heel, the part of the foot. And then from here, I'm going to pick a different color just in case. We can say, okay, well then we've got this, and that comes around. It's hard to see, but and then we're going to come down. Up, no. And they come over. There's that. And then that's the middle of the shoe, right? And then the toe. So these are our planes that make up the different sides of the form, right? So this is going to come down. This one's going to come down. No, I don't want to turn on sticky keys. Right. Alright, so if we take off our background, we have all these forms that make up the shoe and all of this. So I hope you guys found that helpful. I was trying to be thorough but not have it be too long. Please leave a comment in the video if you have any questions. This is just the very beginning steps of setting up your drawing. So the identification of things and knowing how to break up your shapes and break up your forms so that they're digestible for you to translate onto your paper or painting or whatever is really, really important. And take it from someone who didn't know any better a while back, and I try to, you try to skip it. You're like, oh, I want to do the cool stuff. I want to do the fun stuff, and that's not fun or exciting, or it looks weird because, construction lines and all that. But without this stuff, you don't have a solid drawing. Without a solid drawing, your details and the cool, juicy lighting and texture has nowhere to live, right? And then you end up getting lost. If you lose your drawing, especially when you're painting, it just becomes more of a headache than it otherwise would be if, we built the bones solidly first, right? So, thanks for joining me. I hope you guys found this helpful. In the next part of this, I will start going over the proportions, angles, and stuff like that. Because that's the next part of looking, when you have to relate size relationships, stacking what's in front of one shape or form in front of another, and the hierarchy of all that as you build your drawing. So thanks for joining me. Happy drawing, everybody, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.